And welcome back. Here we are with our 2024 Conference Championship weekend for Division One. I first want to apologize. I did mean to have a preview for each conference, running into some technical issues, so we're not able to do it that way. So this preview will be very different. What we're going to focus on are the big uh, matchups in each race, and will determine which race, which conference has the best race for that specific event. For example, we'll look at the 800. Which conference has the best competition there? And it was a wild ride trying to put this all together. As I stated, we weren't going to make any moves without any heat sheets. And so that was always the challenge. But here we are with the preview. And, unfortunately, some of the meets have started yesterday, but we'll still continue on with this preview. And I think we'll have some fun here because there are some big stories to talk about. So we'll get started. And our first leg today is going to be our usual first leg, and it is the sprints and hurdles. And so we'll get started right away with the 60-meter dash, the fastest event on the track. And I think the conference on the men's side with the most to tell is the Big 12 and their teammates. You have Terrence Jones of Texas Tech, and you have DeAndre Swint of Texas Tech. I think, those two men have already ran sub 6.5. And yes, it's at altitude, but I think this is probably the best 1-2 punch in sprints in the country. I don't want to ignore Robert Gregory of Florida and Wanya McCoy of Florida, but I think Terrence Strong and DeAndre Swint really kind of have the 60 down. And I think it will take a sub 6.5 performance to win this race. And so I'm going to lean there, and I think it will be Terrence Jones. On the women's side, I think it's the SEC, and I think it's no secret it's Brianna Liston of LSU and Jason Sears of Tennessee. We're looking at the two fastest sprinters in the country, and it should be an electric race. I think Liston is really sort of the next up and coming talent out of LSU. A 7:07 in her seasonal debut. We've yet to see that big 200 time, but expect for that to come. She's a sophomore, and I actually really appreciate LSU not trying to rush her development because they've been accused of that before. I've read articles, actually had conversations where people think they're pushing them too much. I'm like, no, that's LSU. That's that nature. That they're full of really great historic sprinters. And I think Liston is the next one. But I can't ignore Sears. 7:10. You can't ignore a time like that. And she's really one of those championship level performers. She always rises to the occasion. She's a defending SEC champion. We can't forget that. So it should be a really great race. Now, moving to the 200, we have in the women's side, Miss Sears again of Tennessee. But we're sitting her up against the superstar freshman, Jamisha Ford of South Carolina, who I think is the star athlete of the season as a freshman. I mean, she's at 22-3 indoors. I can't even fathom that. That is insane how talented and how fast this young lady is. And her coach has just done such a phenomenal job of developing her. Tim Hall's been outstanding. And more to come from her. And I think her going up against Miss Sears will probably bring out even more. So could we see the time lowered again? It's very, very possible. And then moving up into the men's side, we have Robert Gregory of Florida versus Tarsis Orego of Alabama. The SEC is the best conference for this event. I think clearly the two best 200-meter runners. They've been going at it since last year indoor season, believe it or not. So this is sort of a rivalry that just keeps going. And we're going to see Florida and Alabama kind of go toe-to-toe a lot at the SEC championship. So it'll be really fun. And I find it just so engaging that Florida and Alabama are two very historic SEC programs that really consistently like to go at each other in a numerous amount of sports, not just track, football, basketball, baseball, softball, it just, and gymnastics, it just keeps going. So I think that this will be a great race. I'm going to lean towards Gregory taking it. I really feel like he's been holding back a little bit in this event all season. He hasn't really ran against that stud competition yet. Oregon's going to bring that out of him, but I think it'll be Robert Gregory. In the 400 on the men's side, you have, I think it's going to be the SEC. And the reason being is because the SEC is really loaded with great 400-meter talent, and I don't think that's going to change. And I think the big name to keep an eye out in the 400 would be Caleb McRae of Alabama, not only in the open 400, but how he anchors. And then we can't ignore Christopher Morales Williams of Georgia. And my preseason pick to win the national title, Emmanuel Bynum of Tennessee, he's still in the top tier portions of the country. I think McRae has kind of, stolen his thunder a little bit, being the top guy, but you never know what happens in a conference championship such as this. The SEC, where the 400 is not one lap and you're in your lane, there's that cut in who wants it more. And I think the dark horse in this race would be Genoa McIver of Florida. We know what he's capable of. We saw what he did at Iowa. He had a rebuild early in the indoor season, which tells me he probably got to Florida a little bit late. But he ran a phenomenal split a couple weeks ago, part of that 302 team that's currently ranked number 2 in the nation. He may be on the outside looking in, but he's got a really solid PR indoors, and more to come because this is going to be his seasonal debut in the 400, and he may really open some eyes here. On the women's side, I think it's pretty much Arkansas, and that's it. And I think the best race to me is in the SEC. Amber Anning of Arkansas and Nikisha Price of Arkansas. Ironically, neither of them are young Americans. You have Anning from the UK and Price from Jamaica, and they're a part of just a strong, solid group of quarter milers there at Arkansas. And Anning with that 22.5 200, I think she's really going to probably lower her 400. I'm expecting for her to go 50 low, possibly 49 high. I think she's looking for a really great championship season. Moving to the hurdles in the women's side, it's finally here. SEC is where I'm going to go again. You have Grace Stark of Florida versus Aaliyah Armstrong of LSU. I've been waiting for this to happen literally all indoor season, and we finally have it. And they're both been at the top of the rankings in the NCAA this year. They were just recently unseated from the top spot, both of them, and that was by uh, Jasmine Jasmine Jones of USC. And now we have number 2 and number 3 going against each other. Grace Stark of Florida, Leah Armstrong of LSU. But they're both capable of winning national titles, and they both have national titles and conference titles in their wheelhouse already. So, Grace Stark has the 778. Aaliyah Armstrong has the 780. It's going to be put up or shut up. And I'm going to shock some people here. I'm actually going to go with Armstrong. I think she might be able to take it to Grace. And not just the 60 hurdles but I think she's going to really be a strong performer in the 60 meters. She's won that conference title indoors as well. But I don't think she's going to be able to go toe to toe with Liston and Sears, because I think Liston is really going to blow the doors off of everyone in that race. Now, on the men's side, again, we're going to go to the SEC. I think it's Jaqueline Scott of Texas A&M and Ty Brown of Arkansas. Um, Jaqueline Scott really kind of has become one of the top hurdlers in the nation. Texas A&M has really kind of cemented themselves as a top tier hurdle program. They've mainly been a 400-meter hurdle program. They've had some phenomenal 400 hurdlers over the years, but to see them, bring themselves around to have some great high hurdlers, this is a really great time for Texas A&M, as they're, I feel like, kind of under a rebrand. They're not the same sprint power when they won all those championships, but they're kind of being, I think, more fluid with their coaching. And I would put a dark horse race. The Big 12 is no slouch in this either. You're going to have Caleb Dean of Texas Tech and Antoine Andrews of Texas Tech. Caleb Dean, to me, is still probably the most raw, talented hurler I think we've seen since Omar McLeod of Arkansas, where he literally could get to the finals of the 60 and score high. With that level of speed, if the technique can just catch up with the speed, he's literally on Grant Holloway pace with his speed. I remember Grant Holloway's junior year when he was running 6.5 low, and I think Dean can get there. So if with that 6'5" low and he's running a 7'3" mid in the hurdles, it's only a matter of time before we see that from Caleb Dean. I don't not expecting a 7'3" this weekend, but 7'4", it's very possible. Now to our second leg, we'll look at the distance races, and this is where things get really interesting because there are some big names not competing in events that we assumed that they would be in, but there should be some great races. We'll start with the 800, and we'll look in the men's side, and we're going to go right to the Big Ten. You have Abdulali Hassan of Wisconsin and Handel Robin of Penn State. Robin by way of Jamaica. He's a big time performer. He shows up in championship meets, which is not a surprise what Penn State guys do. But Wisconsin guys do the exact same thing, and they've been dominating for a lot longer at a lot higher clip. So I think it really is going to be tough for Robin to, defeat Hassan, but let's not be shocked if he does it. I think this is a fantastic race because the field is also really high quality. Although they're the top two guys, I want to really also include the field in this discussion because the Big Ten, again, is a really strong distance conference. On the women's side, surprise, we're going back to the SEC. You have Michaela Rose of LSU and Sanu Jallo of Arkansas. She was at Texas A&M, but I think the transfer to Arkansas was really smart. It's worked for her, and she's developed really, really well. I think it's going to be tough for anyone to really kind of catch Michaela Rose, but if there's anyone that can really push it that has shown that they've got some speed, it's Jallo of Arkansas. Rose has been incredible. She's been so impressive. She's number 2 all time in NCAA history indoors. What more can she do? I mean, we talk all the time about LSU's great sprinters and their hurdlers and their jumpers. We forget they're also a great school with their half milers. They've had some NCAA champions. They've had record All Americans. This is not a shock that there's a talented 800-meter runner at LSU. It's just she's so far ahead of everyone else in their history and in NCAA history. She's only behind one person. And so this may be the season where she actually surpasses her. But let's keep an eye out for Rose. I think the conference is not as deep in this event as it has been in years past, but I think this is the most intriguing race because I really want to see what Rose is going to do on that bank track at Arkansas. And we'll switch to the mile, and we'll stay on the women's side, but we're going to go towards the Big 12. The mile, there are a lot of talented milers that are actually not going to be competing in the mile on the women's side this weekend. Some are doing the 3K, some are doing the 800, some are doing the 5K. But there are still two that are really going at it in the Big 12, and that's Billa Jepkiru of Oklahoma State and Celia McCabe of West Virginia. McCabe has been mentioned on this channel before and on my blog, tracknerd2blogspot.com. Just throwing that out there. Celia McCabe really performs at a high level, and she's a gamer. She's a really good competitor. She's actually a really good race tactician. Excuse me, getting tongue tied. But I'm not gonna ignore Billa. Oklahoma State does very well in championship level performances. They have national titles. They have Big 12 titles, and I think with Texas and Oklahoma leaving the Big 12, I think it's going to be an Oklahoma State Texas Tech battle for years to come, not just on the men's side, but on the women's side for conference supremacy. And where Oklahoma State is able to score in bunches is obviously their distance events, and this is their next star. She's really a big time performer, and I actually am going to give her the lean here. I don't want to make a big thing of predicting on this preview, but I'm really impressed with what she's done so far this season. But I can't ignore McKay, but I'm going to lean towards Billa, and I think the Big 12 will have probably the most competitive race. Not necessarily saying they're going to have the best time, but I think it'll be the most competitive race. On the men's side of the mile, I'm going to look in the Big Ten. Here we are, Big Ten again. You have Adam Spencer of Wisconsin and Nick Foster of Michigan, the actual top two in the conference. And these are two guys who are right now, on the qualifying list to nationals. And I think Adam Spencer of Wisconsin and Nick Foster of Michigan, this will really give us a chance to see who really is the better miler. Michigan, my home state, went to Eastern Michigan, have seen the Michigan guys forever. They've had their moments where they were the top distance program in the conference, but historically it has been Wisconsin that seems to always find a way to edge them. And this is an event where they kind of edge them out a lot. And the irony is that one of Michigan's historic great milers is their coach. And I think that this is pretty much Nick Foster's last shot. And I think this is where he takes it. I'm going to lean towards him to beating Spencer, but I think this will be a very competitive mile. This is a very deep field. I'm actually impressed on the men's side of things when it comes to distance. So many of the best milers and even the longer distance guys are coming down to the shorter distance to compete in this event. I think this weekend we'll see a lot of great competition in the mile. I cannot guarantee there'll be great times because with this being so competitive, I think our runners will be a little bit more technical, and that's where I think Nick Foster has the advantage. So we'll see, but I think the Big Ten is going to be where the mile is most popular. And we'll move to the 3K. And we'll start with the men's side here. And I think the best race will be in the Big 12. And I think it'll be between Brian Musoff, Oklahoma State, and his teammate, Ryan Shope. And as I just stated, once Texas and Oklahoma leaves, I think it'll be an Oklahoma State Texas Tech conference. And as you can see, with having the two best 3K runners, and having the most competitive 3K race of all the conferences, Oklahoma State again, just championship level ready all the time. And this will be a great race. I have no favorite, no prediction here of who will win it, but I think it'll be a very competitive race. And on the women's side, we'll look at the ACC and see a name that I'm really hoping that she does do the mile, and that's Olivia Markosic of Notre Dame. I really hope that she does the mile, even though she's here in the 3K. She's an outstanding mile runner, and there's a lot of great milers this year. We have a lot of sub 430 performances, and she's one of the top milers. And although she's top in the 3K, I feel the mile it's a more competitive race this year indoors compared to last year, where I thought the 3K was really, really good because you had Caitlin Toy. You had a bevy of really great 3K runners. This year it seems to be the mile, and I want to see her in that. But she should do well here against Amina Matug of Duke. This is the ACC is really loaded in the distance events, and this event will highlight that, I believe. There's a lot of talent in this field. There's a great, great chance that someone who has not currently qualified in the race will do so because of the push and the competition that is here in the conference. And I'm also not going to pick a favorite, even though Markosic is number one in the nation. I'm not going to ignore Matug of Duke. I'm just not. As I think she could really surprise Markosic, which is the real main reason why I want her to run the mile. Now, moving to the 5K, we'll continue on with the women. And I looked at a lot of the heat sheets and a lot of the major conferences and compared them to the national ranking list. The only conference where I actually saw where there was two top 10 competitors competing was the Big 12. And I was actually a little disappointed because there's so many big names not running the 5K. I really was hoping to see Parker Valby run the 5K, but she's going to run the 3K at the SEC. But I'm not so sure if that field is as deep as what's going on with the ACC. I think it'll be a great race because you're going to have the Floridas, the Arkansas, the Alabamas. But the ACC from top to bottom, I think is going to be very competitive when it comes to that race. And I think the same thing in the 5K is of the Big 12. I think this will be BYU's opportunity to just sort of remind everybody, hey, we may be the new kids in the conference, but we're here. And I'm expecting a great performance from the Big 12 ladies. You have Jenna Hutchins and you have Aubrey Frithaway. You're looking at Hutchins really kind of being their next big star. She's a talented young sophomore. But I think she may be the woman of the hour when it comes to that event. We'll see. I really, when I was typing out the outline here as I'm reading it, I had a lot of questions on this event. And I was literally shocked. I said, there's not a lot of major competition in the upper half. I think, the 5K will be interesting in my own conference, the MAC. I'm curious to see what happens there. I'm curious to see what happens in the Big Ten. But the competition amongst those in conference, it just does not seem to be as high level as the other distance events. And on the men's side, it's the complete opposite. I'm looking in the Big Ten again, and I'm seeing, Tom Brady of Michigan and Jackson Sharp of Wisconsin. Here we are again, Michigan and Wisconsin in that conference. Again, they're two historic programs, and I think Michigan has to be the only school where they have two studs named Tom Brady in their history. Even finding a picture for him, you're gonna, of course, pull up the football player Tom Brady, the legend, Mr. Seven Super Bowl winner. This will be a great race between Brady and Sharp, and I'm not really sure of where to lean here, which is why I'm glad I don't have to pick a favorite because either is capable, and this is Brady's last shot, and he's kind of been near the championship level or the championship trophy level mark for a while. He's been close to being the guy. And this is his last shot, and I think this is probably his best shot, but it'll be his most competitive race against Jackson Sharp. And it's one of the few times where he's one of the favorites. I mean, before he was just a big time performer and he would finish third or fourth. This year he's, competing to win it. So it remains to be seen. I think it'll be a great race in the Big Ten. A lot of talent in that race in the field. Don't ignore the Michigan State guys. Don't ignore the guys from Indiana. Don't ignore the guys from the rest of Wisconsin. It just won't be Sharp. It'll be others. Great, great field, I think, there. And then moving to the third leg, we'll look at the field events here. And man, oh man, is there some competition. Of all the major disciplines, the field events are extremely competitive in conference, I think, far more so than any of the other disciplines. I mean, the high jump, you have Romaine Beckford of Arkansas, who really is the guy this year. It's not as deep as of a high jump field as it's been in past, but it's been competitive. And he's going to go against a true freshman, Ryan Rankin of Georgia. Again, he's a freshman, so he doesn't know what he doesn't know yet. Who's to tell him that you're not supposed to beat Romaine Beckford of Arkansas? Who's to tell him he can't? That's not how Georgia guys are going to be thinking. And although, Beckford's going to be on his home track at Arkansas, he will have to be on his A game to beat Rankin. Rankin has under his belt an SEC Athlete of the Week award already. So let's not ignore the talent that this young man has. And he's, being coached by Carol Smith Gilbert's staff. I'm sure that he has had championship on his mind, and it's even more so now because he's capable. On the women's side, man, is this a competitive event. We're going to go back to the SEC just like we were for the men. Woo! You have three hosses on the women's side. You have Lamara Diston of Texas A&M, Rachel Glenn of Arkansas, and Charity Huffnagel of Kentucky. Depth, competition. This is going to bring out the best in all three. I am so looking forward to this field event because I really want to see how much higher can Diston go. She's been so dominant historically. With the last person to beat her at the NCAA Outdoor Championships was Charity Huffnagel of Kentucky. And Rachel Glenn of Arkansas, when she was at South Carolina, she's beaten Diston one-on-one before. So both, all three of these ladies are capable of winning the conference title. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the mark is going to be. Will we see a 6-6? Will we see a 6-7? I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'm curious to see how does Diston go out at Texas A&M. How has the transition been for Glenn in Arkansas and Huffnagel at Kentucky? I mean, she was at Ball State. So, now she's in the SEC, and it's a very different ballgame going from the MAC to the SEC. So it remains to be seen. That's going to be a great event. And then we'll go to the pole vault. We'll stick with the women, but we'll go to the Big Ten. And that's also going to be, I normally know that we would think SEC and we would think Arkansas, but they really haven't produced that big gun this year. And I think the Big Ten really has. You have Chloe Timberg of Rutgers. You have Tori Thomas of Illinois. You have Jessica Mercier of Indiana. You have three very good pole vaulters. They're all ranked in the top 8. 3 in one conference, and they're really going to go at it. That's going to be a great race. Or not race, great event. And on the men's side, I think it's the Big 12. I think of all the field events, if there's one that we'll say that's kind of down, I think it's the pole vault. You look across the conferences, and even when you look at the descending list, it seems to be within the top 20. Very rarely will you see multiple conferences listed. It's so spread out. But I do think the Big 12 is where we're going to see the big competitive action. You have Christiane Sampe of Houston, Houston's first foray in the Big 12. This should be fun. And Clayton Sims of Kansas. What a great competition that should be. I'm curious to see what Sims does. Kansas historically has been a great pole vault power. Houston, not necessarily so, but Houston has really developed themselves into a national brand. And not to say that they haven't had great pole vaulters, but not the same level of Kansas. I think Kansas really has had some great success with developing great pole vaulters, and Sims seems to be the next guy. And it remains to be seen if he really can stamp that, because Sampy kind of comes in as the number one guy in conference. And so in the long jump, we move to, and we'll go, of course, to the SEC, where it's going to be a barn burner. In the men's side, you have Wayne Pennick of Arkansas and Malcolm Clemens of Florida. What a great jump off that's going to be. Clemens is so close to getting to 27 feet. He's at 26.11 and change. Pennick is already at 27.4. He debuted, in what, mid-February, early February? No jumps at all in January, and he's already number one. Pennick has just been, a championship level performer since he arrived at Arkansas. And even when he was at Tennessee first before transitioning over, it's unfortunate that he's been more of a jumper in college and less of a hurler, because he was an insanely talented hurler in high school. But he's, as a jumper, just hard to beat. That's going to be a great competition. Florida guys do not like to take a backseat to anyone. They've unfortunately the past couple of years been the only team really capable of challenging Arkansas, because Arkansas has been so dominant in the SEC. And this is an area where they kind of have, because for a minute it just seemed like all the jumping talent was going to Florida. Arkansas could have sort of reshuffled coaches and made an emphasis on that, and it's kind of worked to their favor. But Pennick, I think he's just probably a step ahead of Clemens, but I'm not going to put a favorite here. I'm just going to say it's going to be a great competition. And on the women's side, we'll stay in the SEC. I think it's Claire Bryant of Florida versus Johnny Thomas of Texas A&M. This one I'll have a favorite. I think it will be Bryant. We're still kind of waiting to see her get 22 feet indoors. She'll be also competing in the high jump, believe it or not. Even though she's over 6 feet, she is not one of the top 16. So I think this is a weekend where she's going to look to sort of make sure she cements herself in good position for nationals. I think she wants to improve upon her mark, and Thomas is going to really push her. Texas A&M is no slouch in their jumpers. Obviously, you got Diston. They've had great long jumpers and triple jumpers all the entire time that Pat Henry has been the coach there. So this will be no shock to see this top two in the SEC go at it. And on the triple jump, we'll stay with the women and we'll go to the Big 12. And it's Ruta Lassamy of Texas Tech versus Winnie B of Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State coming on strong with their field events. We know them primarily as a distance power, but they're sort of, expanding their coaching and their development, and they've had some good jumpers. And this year is a sign that they're moving in the right direction with their program. Ruta Lassamy coming over from Florida State to Texas Tech. This is the part of the reason why she did that. She's been pretty much the top triple jumper all season long, and I don't expect for that to change. I do think she's going to win here, but I think the competition between her and Winnie B will be great. And on the men's side, I think we go to the ACC. Finally, here we are on the men's side of the ACC. You have Jeremiah Davis of Florida State versus Russell Robinson of Miami. Russell Robinson has kind of been in Jeremiah Davis's shadow. He's had to be the number two guy because Davis has just been incredible. But I don't think we can ignore the season that Robinson is having. He came on strong late last outdoor season, but this indoor season, he's just really been solid. And I don't want to pick a favorite, but I am leaning towards him. Something just tells me that he may show up in a big way, but we can't ignore Jeremiah Davis. We know he's going to do well on the long jump. But what will he do in the triple jump remains to be seen. Okay, moving to the shot put, we'll stick with the men, but we'll go to the Big Ten. And we'll go to the big heavies when it comes to throwing in the Big Ten. You have Jason Swearens of Wisconsin versus Kevin Schubert of Nebraska. And I've said this many times on this channel before. Nebraska is one of the best technical schools in track and field. They focus on developing you more from a technical aspect when it comes to any discipline within the sport. Don't be shocked if Schubert is the guy. I'm not picking one here, but he's coming from really good championship level pedigree. And on the women's side, I think it'll be the SEC where the competition is thick. You have Alita Van Dalen of Florida versus Jelani Davis of Ole Miss. Florida really, having a new coach, new throwing coach. He's kind of getting his bearings together, developing his throwers at a really, good pace. Still not the level of Ole Miss, but Van Dalen is the one who's the top gunner, and she's defending champion. And although she's going up against Jelani Davis of Ole Miss, who's a champion in her own right, I think this is actually Van Dalen. This is one of the few times where I'm comfortable with picking, a favorite, and I think it'll be her. Big, huge team points for Florida. They're the only team I think capable of challenging Arkansas, not just the SEC meet, but at the national meet as well. And then moving to the weight throw, we'll stick with the women, and this is where Jelline Davis is actually the favorite. Going up against her teammate Jasmine Mitchell of Ole Miss, who was the previous favorite. You're looking at two 80-foot throwers. Woo, these two men are extremely talented. I'm curious to see who comes out on top. But kudos to what Connie Price Smith is doing over there at Ole Miss. She was a phenomenal, thrower in her professional and collegiate career, and she's doing a great job of coaching her kids up. And in this event, she's been very good at developing. And on the men's side, she has Tariq Robinson O'Hagan of Ole Miss, but he's got to go up against Ruben Bank of Alabama. And that's me indicating, yes, I think even in the weight throw on the men's side, the SEC will be more competitive. And then in the men's heptathlon, I'm going to go to the Big Ten. I think that's a really good competition between two top five heptathletes. You have Till Steinford of Nebraska, and you have Aiden Ouimet of Illinois. And I think Steinford really kind of came on strong a couple weeks ago, and he looks the part of a great multi-fit athlete. But I'm not going to pick someone based on looks, so I'm not going to pick here. But I think that's going to be a really good competition. There's a lot of good guys within that conference. The Big Ten, I think, will have probably three or four guys qualifying to nationals. It's going to be a great competition there. And on the women's side, the pentathlon, the Big 12 is where it's really at because you have number two nationally versus number three nationally. And that's Christine Blazovica of Texas and Pippi Lotta Enoch of Oklahoma. This is their last foray as Big 12 athletes. We know next year the Texas and Oklahoma teams will be moving over to the SEC as if the SEC needs more competition. But here we are, the last hurrah of a really tough battle between Texas and Oklahoma. I think I'm going to go with a favorite here. Although Enoch was my preseason favorite to win the indoor title, she's not been able to knock off the top two. And Blazovica really is coming on, strong late. I'm going to go Blazovica of Texas winning the Big 12. Although I think it'll be, a great field. I think she may be the class of it. And then our anchor leg today, we're going to stick with the relays. And we'll start off with the 4x4. On the men's side, I think it is a four-way battle, and it's in the SEC. And it's Florida, Alabama, Texas A&M, and Arkansas. Those are four of the best teams in the nation. The other two, ironically, are in the Pac-12, but unfortunately there's no Pac-12 indoor meet. And at the end of this season, it'll be the last time there is a Pac-12. You have USC and Arizona State. And Arizona State, obviously, number one is they beat Florida, one-on-one. Barely, but be prepared for Florida. Their guys' legs are coming up under them. So that's going to be a great race. Florida, Alabama, Texas A&M, and Arkansas. And I think it's really going to be tight between Florida and Alabama. But those four teams are all capable. On the women's side, we'll stay in the SEC. I think it's just a three-way battle between Arkansas, South Carolina, and Georgia. And I think it really is Arkansas. There really isn't a conference to me that can put together this many top-tier teams. This is the number 1, 2, and 3 team in the nation all in one conference. There's no way that any other conference is going to be able to say, well, we're going to have a great competition too. No, it's because Arkansas can win it with a B squad possibly. But South Carolina is going to bring a strong A squad, and so will Georgia. So I think there will be fireworks here, and it will be a great race. And then we'll move to the DMR. We'll stay on the women's side, but we'll go to the Big 12, and I think it's BYU versus Oklahoma State. I think BYU really has moved over to the Big 12 in a big way. They have been a very strong program on the distance side, and especially in the DMR. I don't expect for that to change. I actually expect for them to just get even better. And Oklahoma State has had that great history, and they're going to have those great DMR legs. And it remains to be seen if Chipkiru Bila, if she hops in that DMR runs the mile leg. I would like to see that against that great BYU team. But I'm not going to pick a favorite here, but I think that'll be the best conference race. And on the men's side, it just may have happened already, but it's the ACC. You have North Carolina, Virginia, Virginia Tech. Three really good teams. Man, oh man, are they strong in the distance events. Specifically, North Carolina is shocking a lot of people because they've been developing and developing. Had to sit in the shadow of the women for a long time, and now here they are, the premier distance program on the men's side, along with Virginia and Virginia Tech, along with Duke and Boston College. So this will be quite an interesting race. I also wanted to give the ACC credit on the women's side because it'll be a great race there too. But I don't think it'll be as competitive as BYU and Oklahoma State because I'm noticing that some of the ACC athletes are going to be held back. As I stated a couple weeks ago, we may not see some of them in the DMR. They may only run the DMR during DMR weekend and focus more on individual events while they're in the conference meet. And that is our preview. I think we're going to be in for a phenomenal set of weekends. We have conference championship weekend. This weekend, there will be some high school indoor state meets, same as next weekend. So be by your phone, be by a laptop, be by a tablet, be by a television. Enjoy all that is our sport this weekend and in the next couple of weeks because we are really going to be seeing some great performances. We're going to be talking about it in our chat rooms. Enjoy the fun that will be this weekend. Please like, subscribe, share. If you have any feedback, positive or negative, please share it. I do want the channel to grow. I want this to be a vibrant part of our community. And I will look forward to seeing you either Sunday or Monday with a recap. I will be certainly more excited then because we'll know who our champions are and we'll have an idea of what the team title picture will be. All right, you guys. Peace.